Today we're here, we're going to talk about a couple tips for photographing kids.
Cheers!
Cheers!
Cheers.
Welcome back to Photography After Hours. And today we're going to be talking about photographing kids, but first I'd like to let you know we are sponsored by PAH, the Photographers Adventure Club, and they do all kinds of events, photo workshops, all kinds of stuff out there, so check it out at photoadvclub.com. And then I'd like to introduce everyone. We have Susie,
Hello.
Scott, and my name is Nick. So today we're talking about kids, and what's the biggest thing and the biggest rule of photographing kids out there?
Patience.
Don't lose your cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely patience, like having patience, and you can't go in there and be all stressed out and freaking out and what's going to happen is going to happen. You kind of seem like you have to roll with it a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, you can't control kids. Anybody, any little kid 5 years and younger, just forget about it. They don't take orders, they don't take direction, they do what they want to do.
So today we're talking about photographing kids 5 and above, which are really easy. Just take their picture, they'll smile, it's all good. So so definitely patience, right? It's the number one rule. You know, are you going to try to like coerce them into doing stuff, or what's your game plan? You've shot kids.
Yeah. Mostly I just try to get to know them first, because I think, especially haven't been around camera equipment and stuff like that, they have so many questions, like, what are you doing? What's all this stuff, right? So if you establish a little bit of a rapport, even if they're a little kid, you can kind of just connect with them a little bit, give them a little bit of a comfort level, that kind of thing, before you just jump in and start pulling out all kinds of, electrical stuff, and plugging
Flashes,
things in and setting things up. Yeah, the bright lights and all that stuff can be confusing and intimidating and distracting.
Definitely. I know you shot for DS Network. You did their calendar 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
And I know Lisa Langella is doing it this year. So what kind of things did you run into shooting those kids? Because now they're not just younger, but they also have a disability, Down syndrome, that makes it even more challenging.
Right. Yeah. Again, number one rule, patience. But beyond patience, you gotta kind of let them just do their thing. Don't control it. Don't let it. Let them kind of get in their own zone. If they're focused on something, go with it. Don't try to pull their focus away from it, because a lot of times they'll get upset. Yeah. Especially kids with disabilities. They focus and they latch onto something, and once they latch onto it, it's really hard to pull them away from it. So you might as well just go with that and just let that roll, because sometimes the more interesting shot is not really them being camera aware, it's more like just photographing them interacting with whatever activity it is that they're doing.
Sure.
So
when they're being themselves,
yeah, when they're just being themselves.
You want the picture to capture their personality,
right.
And the time when they're going to do that is when they're not really paying so much attention to you, what you're doing,
right,
as much.
And that goes with all kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, kids with disabilities, young kids,
mm-hmm.
any kids, they get attached
mm-hmm.
to their activities, and you just let them run the show. Don't try to guide them. Don't try to pose them. Don't try to,
unless they're a little bit older, but little bitty kids, yeah.
Yeah, we had a shoot in here the other day with a big family shoot, and the one kid would not smile. Everyone else is smiling. The daughter's like this, and like he was so serious, and they were like, smile, smile, smile. No matter what they said to this kid, they were like doing stuff and making noises and everything else. The kid was just like stone-faced the whole time. It's like, and they could not get him to break out of that,
Yeah, and almost like the more they focus on that to try to get him to break out of it, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So another thing you were saying is have everything ready. So have your settings ready, have it all figured out, have it like ready to go, so that you're not fiddling with stuff. Like if you're in the studio here, you can do that. You just come in, have your tripod set up, have your lights set up, have it ready to go. And even if you're out on the road, bring an assistant and have it all ready to go, I think.
Yeah, because you got to be quick. Because when you get their attention or when you get that moment, it lasts for like a fraction of a second, and so like you literally just have to catch it at that split second. So you got to be ready and you got to be quick, and so you can't be messing around with your equipment or your lights or your camera or anything like that. You had mentioned tripod. That's another one. Set your camera up on a tripod. Use a trigger release. Don't be behind your camera.
Yep.
You want to be offset of your camera and be interacting with them, and then just have your finger on that trigger. And like I said, all of your settings should be set. Your focus, your exposure, all that. Just all you should be doing is just interacting and pressing a button, and then that's when you're going to get your best shots.
Sandy Pooch has a tripod that, and I don't know what model it is, so you'll have to look it up, and I'm sure she'll tell you. She has a tripod she's used for years and years, but when she demonstrates it, it's unlike other tripods at all, because it goes from a complete upright position all the way down to the floor in a fraction of a second, and she doesn't even really have to get behind it. But she's had it for like 20 years.
Yeah, Paul has one. It's like a chair bottom on it, and then it actually can delatch it, and it's just a pole, and it goes up and down.
Yeah, hers has the legs go out though.
Yeah.
But and I think it's on wheels.
Yeah, it's on wheels, so
yeah,
it goes. You can get from this position straight up and down, and it's just kind of like on a conveyor. Like there's like a not a motor.
A track.
On it. The track
it's on
a
track.
It.
Yeah.
And it's really when I've seen her teach, Sandy, same thing. She's up here and then boom down
and then
here,
she's down
and then
there,
she's not behind the camera. And same thing when Michelle teaches about posing. She's not behind the camera. She's talking to people and everything else. So you see these people that shoot people all the time. They're not behind the camera.
Yeah.
They're trying to be out in front of the camera.
And they're having a sense of humor too, which goes back to
the
not getting too uptight about it, not trying to make it too
you got to play with them.
Structured.
Yeah, play with them. Be a goofball. Use their toy. I mean, when I've got my daughter's 5, my son's 4 years old. My daughter, she loves her little plush toys. She's got these little puppies. She's got a dozen of them, little plush toy puppies, and she'll interact with her puppy. To her, that's like her cast of characters. So if you can bring in their favorite toys that they're familiar with and things that they're familiar with, you can use those to help get good interaction with them. And the other thing is parents. Sometimes
Get
kids,
them out of the room.
sometimes they work really well with parents, but sometimes kids work better without the parents. And sometimes the parents, they think that they're helping you, but they're really not. And so, I've had some parents that like are borderline, but they're really neurotic, like screaming at the kid, look at the camera, do this, look at the camera. And the kid is just getting, the kid's just getting upset. So sometimes parents can actually be your biggest obstacle,
What was Michelle's point on that when she spoke first at workshop? She's like,
it's
it was
hysterical.
A teenager.
Yeah, she's like, I always know. She goes, and this happens all the time. She's like, I tell the parents, don't prepare, don't try to coach them or anything like that. Just come, just get them in the clothes you want the pictures in, and just show up. She goes, inevitably they get out of the car, and the mom's standing there with a hairbrush, and the girls are like, got their arms crossed, and they're like, oh, the sour look on their face and stuff. And Michelle's like, yep, again.
And she pulls the daughter aside, and it's like, is she always like that?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. She's like, oh, okay, let's just get her away. But it's like an older kid, but still applies
like
to
teenagers and stuff. But any age kid, I mean, the parents are gonna, because it's important. You want the portraits of your family. You want your kids, right? You have this vision of those moments when you see your little angel in that beautiful side window light and all that stuff, and you want a portrait that captures that moment, and there's just no way to purposely force that to happen. There just isn't.
Yeah, and that goes back to our other tip. Don't try to control the situation. Just let them run the show. Don't let them do their thing. So, yeah.
So another thing too is you don't really want to be shooting down on your subject, so you don't want to be standing, you want to be laying down or really low with, your angles, because they're little people, and that's just doesn't, they even say with pet photography, so people take pictures of their cats and dogs, and it's like, that's not a good shot. You need to get on eye level with people and pets and other things like that.
Yeah, there are times when shooting down at people are flattering, but this isn't one of them. When you're shooting kids, you really want to have that eye-to-eye contact. And so yeah, that means get
down
in the dirt, get dirty, lay in the sand or dirt or wherever, and get down, get on your knees, get down with their level. So, you know, that's going to be able to get the best connection with them.
It's going to put them in a better, more flattering and natural perspective. Also, the angle of the picture also want is that everyday kind of angle, not necessarily the grown-up, you know, like.
Right.
Now, on going back a little bit to equipment, you were saying have all your settings ready and everything. Now, if you're on a tripod and you're not moving and they're not moving, do you generally take it off of autofocus? So then you could keep going and not having to worry about a focus, especially if you're using a trigger.
Yeah, it depends. I'll often use tracking in those situations, especially if they're moving around. If they're not moving around, then what I'll do is I won't use the point.
Yeah, put a few up.
I'll put, yeah, like a zone or, you know, an area. Like, I don't know what you call it. Yeah, it's a cluster.
It depends on the manufacturer. It's called different things.
Right, but yeah,
it's a grouping
if you put it where you generally know that they're going to be.
Like center weighted, all kinds of.
Yeah, and a lot of times for kids, you know, especially if they are jumping around and moving around, another tip that I do is I tend to shoot a little bit wider.
Oh, I thought you were going to say duct tape.
Well, I do tend to shoot a little bit wider.
Yeah.
And try to have them in the center frame, and then that gives you latitude to crop. And I know that, you know, a lot of people, you know, sometimes you can get it nailed and a lot of times you're composing in camera, but when the kids are all over the place and they're jumping up and down and they're moving all over the place, it's better just to kind of shoot a little bit wider and put them in the center of the frame, and then that gives you a little bit more latitude to
be safe. Yeah, be safe with it.
And because of the movement and stuff too, a little bit higher aperture.
Shutter.
Typically.
Yeah.
Higher aperture and shutter.
Yeah, and shutter, but you want your depth of field to be slightly deeper, because that instant they turn their head and then their eyes out of focus.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so you don't shoot at 1.4 and.
Yeah. You know. I got a lot of spectacular pictures of your son's nose. It's like, oh.
So get down to their level, and then another thing, I do this even with models. When I have models come into the studio here, is I set up a tether to my laptop, so I can go and set my tether cord up. It goes into Lightroom, and then it pops up on the plasma display so that they can see it. And like Jamal was just here, and he's like, "Whoa, that's awesome! I love it! I love it! That's great!" So do you show them their photos, or do you not show them the photos? Or?
Yeah, kids love that. They love to see the back of your camera.
Yeah.
And sometimes it gets them even more excited, because now they can see, they understand, they now have a connection of what the camera is and what it's doing, and then they'll be more willing to be like, you know, go back there, shoot me again, do it again, you know. And so now they're hamming it up, and so yeah, definitely show them, because they love to see themselves on, you know.
Yeah. So, and I know, you know, so what happens if you get a hyper kid? Do you just work with it, or?
You just roll with it.
Roll with it.
Some of them don't get like tired out, so you have to just roll with it.
Just roll with it and let it keep going.
They'll tire you out first.
So I know I've shot Connor before, and I'm laying in the grass, and I got like a few good shots, but like, you know, you get those few good ones, and then that's it. They're done with it. They're playing with this and doing that and doing that, and he's 20 different directions. I have bubbles going up in the air, and it's like, oh, cue the bubbles, do this, do that, and he's playing with Dr. Seuss and so a Cat in a Hat, and I'm like, who gave him that? You know, so
yeah, you switch gears too. So then you take pictures of him reading, and then when he later has his interest,
doll, not a book.
Oh, okay. Then when they get their interest back in, you know, chasing bubbles or whatever, then you switch gears. But cool. It all depends on how much time you have to work with them too. I mean, the bulk of the shooting that I've done that has had kids have been in our charity events and things like that in the studio environment. I mean, aside from pictures of my own, you know, family and friends, children and stuff, the candid type things, but in a studio environment, it's mostly been for the charities that we support. And you don't have a lot of time to work with. We don't have the luxury of like an hour usually to sit with each family. But you just roll with what you got, and you know, I think all the points, particularly about capturing just who they, you know, where they are in that moment, that kind of stuff is, but rather than forcing it, is a really big thing.
So last thing before we wrap it up. So if you have a difficult kid and you just can't break through, at that point, would you just break off and either take a break or kind of do a timeout or do another session, just say, okay, this is just not working today? Because sometimes it's a bad day. You know, everyone has a bad day, especially kids, you know, terrible twos, all kinds of other things. So at that point, how do you figure out a plan of action if it just is not working? And
well, you got to figure out what it is that's not working, because usually they're disturbed by something, you know. And so if you can figure out what it is and you can eliminate it, then maybe you can get them back on track. I mean, if they're full on having a temper tantrum and it just isn't happening, then yeah, you take a break. You just, you know, you take a break.
Or you reschedule and do it another day.
You know, that's the thing about kids, is that they're so unpredictable. There is no guarantee. There is no, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I tell people that. I'm like, you know, hey, you know, there's no controlling a 5-year-old or 2-year-old or any of them. You can't.
And the shock collars don't look good in the pictures.
Yeah, they don't work.
I tried those little dog ones, and like the dads like them, the moms not so much.
Yeah, they don't work too well. But you just roll with it. Like I said, you just
like thumbs down from that one.
You
like
let them.
like
Yeah. You let them do it. I mean, if they're full blown having a tantrum, there's not a lot you can do with that. I mean, you just kind of
roll with it.
You got to take a break and let them calm down and figure out what the problem was.
Yep.
Sometimes it's just as much of, you know, they feel uncomfortable, or they don't want to stand in front of the camera, or they're just being challenging, or, you know, whatever it is. I don't know. It's there's a lot of kid psychology there, but
just human psychology.
Another episode.
Yeah.
Kid Psychology 101. Cool. So we hit a couple good points. Let me just recap really quickly. Number one thing, patience. Let the kids run the session. Don't try to control them. Be ready to get your settings and everything right before you get into the session so that you're ready to go. Use the tripod and a trigger if you can, so you can be away from behind the camera. Play with them. Be a goofball. Have some fun. And get down to their level, eye level, and show them their photos so that they can see what you're doing out there. So hopefully these tips help you and help you get some better pictures out there, and best of luck. It's definitely a challenging thing to do.
And it's fun, so make it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, have fun. All right,
Awesome.
We'll see you guys next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.